I think one of the things I learned the hard way was hiring people who are good but not great. It's very easy as a founder to say, oh, this person's good, therefore we should hire them. And the catch is that when you start hiring people who are good but not great, you start to lower the average quality within the organization. It has like a cultural trickle-on effect to the rest of the team. And I think what tends to happen is you have to let go of those people. So I learned that the hard way. We made a lot of hires. We were like, yeah, this person's good. They're not amazing, but like they're good enough. And I think good enough is not good enough, right? It has to be like great or nothing. And we learned that the hard way. One thing I learned the hard way is that before something works, there's always the low period, right? I see so many founder friends who are going through that low period. And now that I've seen this pattern play out time and time again, when I see them in the low, rather than questioning them or judging them or thinking they're not going to succeed, I'm just like, this is normal. My job right now is to support you and tell you the low is part of the journey. And that was true for me, right? The 3 months before starting Superpower were probably some of the lowest of my life. I felt like I didn't know what I was working on. Everything was hard. Finding capital was hard. Building a team was hard. Stuff was falling apart. And this is natural. This is just part of the journey. And I think when you realize that is part of the journey, when you're in that low period, you can now say, cool, this is just part of it. Let's keep pushing through. One of the things we learned the hard way at Superpower is that hype does not equal growth. I think one of our theories in the early days of the company is we make a lot of noise, we do viral marketing, we build a wild brand, we have millions of people visiting our website and seeing our content. And the reality is that will not grow your company, right? That cannot be your growth strategy. And I see so many companies think it will be. Cluely is the canonical example on Twitter, and it doesn't work. What these companies always realize is that's great to maybe attract some talent. It's great to maybe attract capital and funding. It doesn't move the needle that much with customer acquisition. So I'm not saying don't create hype. I think it has very great emergent properties, but it has to be one part of a growth strategy, not the thing you bet growth on. I didn't really think I ever work. I just live. And the catch is all the things that I like to do to live, people tend to call work. So you could contend that every waking hour I am working in some way. I more or less only do things if I think they contribute to the mission I'm on, and people call that work. So under the normal way of approaching this question, people would say I'm always working 110, 120 hours a week. If there's an option to do something that is not working, I won't do it. When I'm at the gym, I'm working, I'm checking messages, I'm listening to a podcast on like 3x speed, and I'm on a phone call. So I'm typically always working, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm doing something that brings me a lot of energy and joy. I don't ever really get close to burnout, and I think there are a few things that are true. One is that I'm working on something I deeply enjoy and find a lot of meaning in, right? It's a way to recharge in many respects. Two is just general biological resilience. I think that I've always been biologically resilient and able to work hard and push hard. Three is I do make sure to have the foundations right. My health is reasonably good. I'm always never sleeping amazingly, but I'm always getting like a baseline level of sleep, getting a baseline level of exercise, getting a baseline amount of sunshine, getting the right nutrients. I'm very conscious of metabolic health. So I think if you have those three things, meaning, biological resilience, and the foundations of health right, you can actually be quite robust to burnout. If I'm getting close to burnout, it depends on the cause of burnout, right? Often it just is solved by getting 8 hours of sleep one night. Sometimes it's solved by meditation if my brain is just like all over the place. Sometimes it's solved by exercise. It's rarely solved by all of a sudden not working and doing less. I don't find that tends to help me, at least. Often the feeling of burnout or the feeling of stress for me is having something that needs doing that is not done. And the problem with like going to the beach for a day is that that thing needs doing even more now and it's still not done. So in a weird way, it causes more stress. Like there have been times when people have said to me, oh, you're really stressed, take 3 days off. And I'll take 3 days off and they're the most stressful 3 days ever. And I get back, I'm like, fuck, why did I do that? So I think about that often. It's a matter of actually just doing the thing. And when that thing's done, stress tends to go down. The world as we know it today exists because people took risk, right? The nature of risk is doing something which does not exist yet, but that you want to exist in the future, right? It's diving into an unknown. It's taking a bet. It's delaying the payoff curve. It's doing something which today might be expensive, but tomorrow might pay off. And that is the story of why the world is great today. So I think to actually progress humanity forward, to create cool things in the world, we need to take risk. And the catch is that society isn't necessarily structured for us to take risk. We aren't taught how to take risk. We're told that taking risk is risky, which I think is one of the biggest misnomers, because I think often taking risk is the least risky thing you can do. And we can play out two lives, right? We can play out the safe life, and people often say the safe life is you go get a corporate job and you work there for 20 years and you earn like a reasonable salary. The fundamental risk there is you work for 20 years and you look back over your life and you're like, I did nothing with my life. And to me, that is a real risk, because you risk actually wasting your life. And we can play out the opposite, which is I tried to create things I wanted to exist in the world. I had a lot of fun along the journey. I met amazing people. I made something actually come to life. Yeah, it might sound risky, some of those things, but I think a lot of the time it's far less risky than people think. Yeah, I think people should take more risk when they're younger. It's so much easier to take risk when you're younger, because maybe you've got 50K in the bank account. So if you go to zero, you've gone down 50K. Whereas if you take a lot of risk when you're 40, maybe you've got $1 million in the bank account, and that's a little bit of a bigger downfall, right? So I think people should take more risk when they're younger, explore more things, jump out of the plane, and often those things will reduce risk, in the sense that one of the examples I think of often is friends saying to me, should I move from Australia to the US? And they say something along the lines of, oh, it's so risky to move to the US. And what I play out to them is something like, well, let's play out the two scenarios. Scenario one, you move to the US, you're here for a year, and you learn it's not great. Well, what you just had is a year that was very enriching, you learned a lot, and now you're just back in Australia, fine. Let's play out the opposite scenario. You never go to the US. Well, maybe every single year for the rest of your life, you're asking, what if? What if I did that? What if I did that? What if? It's this massive regret that continues to loom over you. So I think people should just take way more risk, especially when they're younger. Yeah, like, I don't know, one thing I think of often, the founders who started things when they were late, right? Jeff Bezos started Amazon when he was 33. Steven Schwartzman started Blackstone when he was 37. Elon started Tesla, I think, around the age of 36. There are many stories of people starting not necessarily when they're very young, but also when they're older. I think one thing that is true is you want the foundations to be stable. And the second the foundations are stable, it's better now than never, right? I think one thing that's really interesting is what would the me on my deathbed say? Would the me on my deathbed have regrets for not doing something? And often the answer is yes. When you project out that far, it becomes far easier to think about taking these risks, because we don't want to look back at our life and be like, I did not live life actually living the way I wanted to. It's really hard. Sometimes I'll do that zoom out and regret minimizing thing, but I think my formulation is typically maximize options, explore everything, and then when you find the one thing that works, then double down, then start burning the boats. I do think there is like explore mode of life and kind of exploit mode of life. And explore mode is do everything, exploit mode is double down. I don't think I've ever taken big risks. People say I have. They say, oh, you left Australia and you moved to the US with no money in your bank account. You started a company rather than getting a good job. You took this massive risk whilst you're skiing off-piste between trees and off cliffs. And I just don't think much of it as risky. I think in many respects, the role of a founder is being able to calculate risk, being a better like a risk pricing machine than others are. And I think the world just like chronically misprices risk. People tend to think things are far riskier than they actually are. So look, some of the things I've done might sound like risks to others. In my mind, they're actually not that risky when you start doing them.